Welcome back, friends. This is Dave here, and today we're doing another space stock news video. I'm going to make this a pretty regular thing, maybe every week or two, depending on how much is going on in the space industry, which is usually a lot. There's always launches, announcements, all sorts of things happening right now. It's a very exciting time for the industry, very interesting. So we want to keep on top of it here. If you're a investor in any sort of space stock, you might enjoy checking out these videos on a regular basis. Before we hop into the news, I just wanted to invite you personally to join our Discord server, linked down below in the description, where we just talk about investing and stocks and just hang out in general, talk about anything we want. It's a good time. It's very useful for us to work together on these things. Nobody really has the time to do the amount of research on their own that we can do when we work together. So very useful community, completely free, and it's a good time. With that, let's head over to the space stock news. Okay, so let's get into the news. There's been a lot happening the past week or two, so we have a lot to cover. I'm going to try and cover this stuff in a pretty unbiased manner, just kind of relay the facts. I might slide in my own commentary or opinion on some of these, but I'll try to keep most of that for the other videos. I want to try to cover this in a pretty unbiased way. So first off, I do love Rocket Lab, so that's always number one on my list, and we have a lot of news for the company this past week. First of all, obviously, I always love to see the launches, and the second of the two back-to-back NRO launches was successful. This was launched on August 5th after being delayed a couple times. First off, the customer, the NRO, asked for a delay so that they could update the software on their satellite, which they did a few days later. And then we had another launch attempt, but the winds were just too high, so that had to be aborted. After this, we were finally able to launch successfully. Really happy to see that. Unfortunately, the launches are 1 a.m. my time zone, so I wasn't able to watch it live, but happy that this was successful. This launch was actually under Rocket Lab's new responsive launch program, which gives customers added flexibility in terms of scheduling and when they want to launch, so that does give Rocket Lab a little bit of extra earnings in terms of the launch being under the responsive launch contract. But on the other hand, it was a little sad to see this rocket booster was potentially reusable if we had caught it with the helicopter, but we didn't do a catch attempt this time, so that was just a one-time use. Now that these rockets are rolling off the line reusable, I find it a little sad when they don't get reused, but still well worth the launch for sure. Next up, very exciting that Rocket Lab announced a new Investor Day conference and presentation. It is on September 21st, 2022. Obviously, Peter Beck will be presenting and attending. The company is going to focus on the progress that they have made since they de-SPACed back in August of 2021, which is basically when they went public on the stock markets. They're going to go over their current roadmap, talk about the development of their new Neutron rocket, as well as future growth opportunities. I will be very excited to watch this Investor Day, and I'm definitely covering it in detail after it finishes. So stay tuned for that. Finally, we have our Q2 results scheduled for this week, August 11th, so I'm definitely going to watch those closely. Peter Beck is also to present at a new B of A securities conference this week. Pretty busy guy. I don't have a lot of details on what he's going to talk about, but I always like to follow these presentations and discussions in case we can learn some little new bits of information from Peter. So Astra has had an extremely eventful week. Their earnings results for Q2 were on the 4th of August, and they had a whole host of announcements made by CEO Brian Kemp. Extremely controversial stock. I'm finding anytime I mention it, I always get a lot of comments that seem to be angry or basically just angry. So I'm going to try and keep this very neutral. I will, give my own opinion on Astra in future videos. I'll keep this to just the facts, and hopefully no one gets mad at me for that. So first of all, Astra announced that they're pausing rocket launches until at least 2023, and quarterly losses have continued while they are investigating the failure of their last launch. We all knew the last launch of Rocket 3.3 was a failure, and they were launching a payload for NASA. But bigger than that, even in my, probably equally big in my opinion, is that they're completely canceling work on Rocket 3.3 and all future launches from this rocket in order to focus on their newer, larger Launch 4 vehicle. I found this extremely shocking. So much work has gone into this rocket. It's had a lot of troubles, a lot of failures. If you're an Astra shareholder, you really wanted to see these launches continue until Rocket 4 goes live. Right now, they have a lot of work ahead of them in order to get this brand new rocket launching. Like, I can't even begin to go into how much work it is to get a new rocket launching. There's always problems, always things you run into. It's extremely difficult. We all know space is difficult. So, difficult times for Astra to try and get this new rocket going, and hopefully they can accomplish that. Also, we had our Q2 results, and what we learned was that for the quarter, they had an EPS, earnings per share, of negative 25 cents. This is worse than the forecast, which was negative 20 cents. So they lost a little bit more money per share than was expected by the analysts. The adjusted EBITDA loss was $48.4 million, and revenue was $2.7 million, so a little on the low side there for sure. CEO Brian Kemp stressed that they do have products beyond their rockets now that they will no longer be launching until 2023, and they have pre-orders for 103 rocket engines. So he is trying to stress that they can still make money without launches. Must have been a really tough problem on Rocket 3.3 to just abandon it like that. Very, very shocking for me to see. Continuing on, Astra announced $100 million committed equity facility, which basically means that they are issuing $100 million worth of new shares to this investor, or at least they have the right to do so. They currently had, before this, about $2 million left on the books, and as you could see, their adjusted EBITDA loss was $48 million. So if you multiply that by 4, you're looking at, not that long of a runway. So they really needed more cash, and they are raising it. Now, on the downside for shareholders is your slice of the Astra pie is smaller. So you can think of it, say there was, you have the same number of shares of the company, but now there are more shares in the company. So your ownership as a percentage basis is smaller. And also, there have been some limitations put on this so that in no event will the number of shares sold exceed 20% of the current value of the company. So they're allowed to sell basically up to 20% more shares, 1/5. So your ownership of the company is going to go down by 1/5 of the overall value, but at the same time, the company will have $100 million in the bank to try and get their products working. Definitely, when you do this, you want your stock price to be high so that the effect is reduced, but they have had to do this at quite a low valuation, so tough pill to swallow for shareholders, but they really do need that capital. The stock, obviously, not very happy with all these announcements, dropped significantly. This is a 1-month chart we're looking at. Just a quick note on Relativity Space. I don't usually cover them in too much detail because they're not publicly traded, so us retail investors can't get the opportunity to invest in them if we want to. You'd have to be an accredited investor for that, have a very large net worth, and make the purchase in a private kind of agreement. It's extremely difficult for us regular investors. But I still like to keep track of them because they are an up-and-comer in the space potentially, and they could be a future competitor, and they may go public one day. You never know. So their Terran 1 rocket, not Terran R, sorry about that. Their Terran 1 rocket is preparing for a launch attempt very soon. This would mark the first time the company makes it to orbit if the launch is successful. They did previously attempt a launch of this rocket, which was unsuccessful. They also have completed a hot fire of all 9 of their engines successfully. And we had a tweet from Michael Baylor, who was speaking to someone at the company, saying that their first flight should be in a few weeks. So does that mean 2 weeks, 4 weeks, 6 weeks? Who knows, right? Your guess is as good as mine. Elon Musk, for one, is extremely famous for saying a couple of weeks, and then that will drag on for, months. So hard to say for sure, but we'll definitely watch that launch with a lot of interest. Virgin Galactic also had some more delays for us. The space tourism company again delayed its commercial service, calling for a launch now in the second quarter of 2023. They had previously disappointed investors by pushing back their launch. They had originally planned it for the third quarter, then the fourth quarter of 2022, and now we're into 2023. So obviously, if you're not launching, you're not making money. Investors aren't very happy about that, and share price is going down. It's a very tough business, the space business, Definitely not for the faint of heart if you're an investor in this space, and you better do your research and make sure you're confident in the company you're investing in. So hopefully Virgin can get their issues sorted out and start launching tourists once again up to, well, you can call it orbit perhaps. Maxar Technologies, just a quick note here, they're usually less splashy company. They don't do launch, but they do satellites and stuff like that. Their board of directors actually improved a quarterly dividend. That's something that's extremely rare in the space business. Usually you're investing all your money in future growth, future products. Not a lot of companies are at the mature state where they're willing to pay out a dividend. So good on Maxar for being able to do that. Now, it is a small dividend, just 1 cent per share, and that's a quarterly, so 4 cents per share on the year, and a share price is $28.35. You can do the math on that. Quite a small dividend, but still notable in that they have one at all in the space industry, and the company, at least the board of directors, feels is in a pretty healthy place to be able to start paying back their shareholders. Now, just a quick note on Lockheed Martin here. I don't usually follow them that closely either, just because they're well known for their jet planes and aerospace, not so much for the space side of things. But they did have a successful launch from Cape Canaveral for the U.S. Space Force. The Space Force is now communicating with their 6th space-based infrared system geosynchronous Earth orbit satellite, which was built by Lockheed Martin. The launch was performed by United Launch Alliance with an Atlas V rocket. That's all our news items for today. Let's head back and do a little wrap-up. So definitely an eventful week and a half, or 2 weeks since I made a space stock news video. We have a lot of exciting stuff going on for Rocket Lab with the new Neutron Investor Day that we look forward to seeing, as well as the earnings coming up, a successful launch. Good stuff there, and Astra's been having some trouble lately, unfortunately. They have completely canceled their Rocket 3.3. They are issuing new stock in order to raise more capital, and they won't be launching until 2023, so tough to see for them. It's a rough industry out there, really difficult, so congratulations on Maxar for making it to the point where they can issue a dividend, and congratulations as well to Lockheed Martin on a successful launch and deployment of their satellite. That'll be it for today. Do check in, because I'll soon have my own thoughts on Astra in a separate video where I go over their earnings results, as well as we have Rocket Lab's earnings results coming up and a presentation by Peter Beck at a new investors conference. I'll definitely be watching that closely to see if there's any new info to give you guys, and just a lot of exciting stuff coming up. So I hope you'll hit that subscribe button to continue tuning in. See you next time, guys. Bye.